and welcome to the 1990 Hungarian Grand Prix. It's the Retro Racing Managers League from Downforce UK, brought to you by GoBobber.uk, Clapham North and Stopwatch Hospitality. I'm Jake Sanson. Great to have you with us once again. It's been an interesting mid-season after the German Grand Prix, where we saw Heinz-Harald Frentzen win his second Grand Prix in a row. The new boy at Tyrrell definitely maximising his potential out on the circuit. There's going to be some changes for 1991. We know for a fact now that Williams and Porsche are going to team up for the 1991 season, and they have acquired the services of Thierry Boutsen once again, and the 1988 world champion Ayrton Senna is going to move to the team. That is a very exciting announcement. Gerhard Berger will be retained by McLaren. The Tyrrell drivers will stay on board for next year, Jean Alesi and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and the two Brabham drivers will remain in Alain Prost and Mika Hakkinen. So that's going to be fascinating stuff. We've also heard that the Leighton team is going to be taken over essentially by Honda. That will become the new works outfit for 1991, but they will be demoted to pre-qualifying, as technically it is a new team entrant, even though the looks of the cars are going to be pretty much unchanged. That means that another team is going to get a chance of moving into the top 10. So the Constructors' Championship just got hotter as they go to the second half of the season. It's the Hungarian Grand Prix here at the Hungaroring. We're going to start with pre-qualifying. As always, the first three teams that cross the finish line are the ones that progress through to the main race. And it's JJ Leto that gets pole position this time in the Monteverdi. Alongside him on the grid is Pierluigi Martini. Then it's Damon Hill's Dallara and Bruno Giacomelli in the Lola, with Martin Donnelly's Eurobrun in 5th position. 5 different teams in the top 5 places. Martin Brundle is next up. Then Mark Blundell and Paul Warwick in the Osella and Porsche. Johnny Herbert and Michael Schumacher share the 5th row of the grid in the Dallara and the Reynard. Then it's Alessandro Zanardi and Bertrand Gachot from Aguri Suzuki and Eric Bernard. Piercarlo Ginzani lines up alongside Ukyo Katayama. Then Paul Tracy's Porsche and Alan McNish in the Life. Christian Fittipaldi, his teammate with Eddie Irvine, then Juan Fangio II, Joachim Winkelhock, Roland Ratzenberger, Willie T. Ribbs, and the AGS cars of Roberto Guerrero and Gabriele Tarquini. Time to go racing at Hungary. The clouds are gathering. There have been some rain showers over the course of the day as well, so that could make the race surface very greasy indeed for this Hungarian Grand Prix. The competitors are lining up on the starting grid. We're on board with Damon Hill in the slightly blacker Converse Dallara. Lights will go green and we'll be racing. Pre-qualifying begins. First 3 teams across the line progress through to the race. JJ Leto getting a very sluggish start. You can see the teams bogging down in the damp conditions of the circuit. And there's a lot of wheel spin as the cars are trying to get themselves up to speed to their first corner, but they're tippy-toeing a little bit on this greasy surface. Down into the first corner, we could see a couple of cars making it a bit wrong as Eddie Irvine slides into the back of the Porsche with its new celebratory livery after the Works team confirmed they will not be a Works team for 1991. They're joining forces, as we mentioned, with the Williams team. It's a very scary moment indeed for the team as they come through. Sorry for the slight issues with the sound in the early point of the race, but they have now returned. So a big moment for Eddie Irvine as the field goes through. There's JJ Leto in the Monteverdi as he heads his way through to the right-hander. And the Finn is out in front. This is going to make team boss David Yunt very happy indeed, as the team made a massive power upgrade for this round of the championship. And so the Monteverdi team are running towards the sharp end. Here's Martin Brundle in the Minardi. 7th position at the moment, trying to chase down the Woolworths Eurobrun of Martin Donnelly. That's the Ulsterman who is there in P6 at the moment. And the field continues its way through in the first couple of laps here at the Hungaroring. 39 laps, 1 mandatory pit stop, which they can take any time after about lap 13. And of course, the pit lane window is not the only time they're allowed to pit. If there is an incident on the first lap and they have damage, they can choose to come into the pits on that lap if they so wish. You can see how moistened the circuit is. It's very damp. The only other choice, the only other major change that you'll notice to one of the cars out there is the Ferrari team have had a bit of a livery update as well. They'll have their cars out in the main race a little later on. Here's Damon Hill making his bid in the red and black Converse Dallara. And he gets through nice and easy there, so no major problems at all for Damon Hill as he makes his way up into 3rd place, chasing after Martini in the Glenfiddich Minardi. So there's Leto in the Monteverdi, going well at this moment in time. Dropping down the hill, down the crest, and then moving up their way through to the next part of the course. And there's Ukyo Katayama. He's having a go at the Osella with its Lego insignia, although they have now got sponsorship from Fondmetal on the car, because that is going to become the Fondmetal race team for 1991. They've decided to buy into the team. They still like the Lego branding, but they've obviously brought in some of their own commercial partnerships into the car as well. And there is the Dallara. Damon Hill pushing it as hard as he can in the Converse Dallara, running very nicely there in P3. Apparently the car is going to look like a Converse All-Star for the 1991 season. They're actually going to make the whole livery very much like a Converse shoe, which is going to be very interesting if they can pull that one off. There's Martini in the Glenfiddich Minardi, running a good race there in second position. We've got Warwick in 5th place in the Porsche. That car with a very distinctive new livery for the remainder of the season as the Porsche brand transitions to the Williams team for 1991. And there is Damon Hill on another fastest lap and going into 2nd place. A good run from Damon, who really seems to be getting to grips with this Hungaroring circuit. Meanwhile, Warwick gets up the inside of Giacomelli and moves the Porsche up into 4th position. So there's JJ Leto getting it slightly wrong in turn 2. The track is still slippery in places. They're on slick tyres, but there was rain earlier on in the day, so expect to see a few cars going a little bit doolally around the circuit. Suzuki has lost ground to Johnny Herbert on this lap as well, I notice. And Katayama managed to get the move on Zanardi just in front, so already an interesting start. But a fascinating battle thus far here at the Hungaroring as Damon Hill closes up on race leader JJ Leto. And the Dallara driver is definitely on a lighter fuel load than the Monteverdi as he tries to close up. Here's Paul Warwick in the new liveried Porsche. It looks very different from this round of the championship, but you can still very much see the Porsche looking very strong as it starts to become identified with the Williams branding. It is essentially now, and they've made no mistake about it, Porsche is essentially now the Williams junior team for 1991 as the two teams join forces next year. So you can see that the car has started to look a little bit more like a Williams in this second half of the year. Here's Leto as we go into lap 4. Damon Hill is going to have a run, I'm sure, here at JJ Leto. He really seems to be getting on well with the Hungaroring circuit. Here comes Damon Hill. Up the inside line, can he make his bid to go into the lead of the race? And he has indeed. A brilliant start for Damon Hill, who really has clocked on with this Hungaroring circuit. And he's going beautifully. He's worked his way up into the lead. So team boss Emma Featherstone is going to be absolutely delighted with the progress of Damon Hill. Here's Pierluigi Martini, trying to get close to JJ Leto to make his move. So the battle is going to be raging as they come off the top part of the course. And here's Paul Warwick having a nice little battle with Martin Donnelly as Warwick tries to close back up on Bruno Giacomelli. Paul Warwick, of course, the man who won the pre-qualifying race last time out in Germany, as the green Quaker State colours have been reduced for Hungary onwards. But Hill leads Leto, Martini, Giacomelli, Warwick, Donnelly, Brundle, Bernard, Blundell and Schumacher. So a great battle so far. At this moment in time, all 26 of the cars are still circulating around here in pre-qualifying. So the battle is getting pretty tasty. Into the chicane once again as Martini starts to have yet another look at the Monteverdi in front. Still waiting to hear what sort of noises are coming from some of these teams next year. Monteverdi have signed up again for 1991. They are going to continue when at the 11th hour at the end of 1989 they were saved by team manager David Junt. And now the team is continuing into the 1991 season, which is great news for the Swiss, as they are going to have their own Formula 1 team as they continue on into 1991. Here's Giacomelli about to lose ground again to Warwick in the Porsche. Warwick gets in on the inside line, makes the move stick. Nice overtake there into the first hairpin for Paul Warwick, as the Porsche continues to develop in 1990, although they're not going to have their own race car in the 1991 season, of course. They're going to be teaming up with Williams. Zanardi is having a bit of an interesting run as he slips back behind Johnny Herbert once again. But here's your race leader, Damon Hill, in the Converse Dallara. This is the first time, really, that he's led a race from the front, having forced his way there with some great overtaking moves. Here's Gasho trying to get past a goody Suzuki, but the Belgian is not able to overcome the Japanese at the moment as they continue on their way through. It looks as though they're going to have a rebrand for 1991, the Coloni team. They're going to have Lewis Bassindale come in and take over the team. He's going to become the team manager from the end of the season. A lot of the managers will get their first crack at their race teams at the season-ending New Zealand Grand Prix at Pukekohe. So that's going to be an interesting one for them. And of course, there's a non-championship race coming up, actually, in this 1990 season, just before the Belgian Grand Prix. The next race that the drivers will go to, or the teams, I should say, will go to, is going to be the Birmingham Super Prix. And I'm told that is only going to be for pre-qualifying teams. So only pre-qualifying teams will be going to the Birmingham Super Prix. So that is a new one. The racing obviously is going to be for drivers that do not have a massive amount of experience and have not really sat in the car for any decent length of time over the course of 1990. But the Birmingham Super Prix, they've been trying for 5 years to get their cars onto the grid as Winkelhock goes off. Winkelhock goes wide there at turn 1. Now, I did say we were going to see this a few times over the course of the race because of the tricky conditions. The drivers have thus far been keeping it fairly on the island, fairly decently, but Winkelhock now finds himself towards the back. Incredible when you consider that a couple of races ago, Winkelhock was dominating pre-qualifying. In both France and Silverstone, he won the races. But here at the Hungaroring, where the car is very different in terms of handling. Donnelly's been hit! Donnelly's been hit by Giacomelli! So Donnelly and Giacomelli have both gone off the road together. Let's have another look at it. So Giacomelli is trying to chase down Martin Donnelly, who's got through into the position. And I wonder what happened here. Did Donnelly just make a mistake and Giacomelli on the damp patch ploughed into him? Let's have a look. So look, Donnelly runs wide, Giacomelli runs wide, and they hit each other. So that's a big disaster for Martin Donnelly, and I do believe he is going to be out of the race. Yes, indeed. So Donnelly in the Eurobrun out of the race at the hands of Bruno Giacomelli. And that is terrible news for Eurobrun as Piercarlo Ghinzani comes through again. But JJ Leto is ploughing in behind Damon Hill. So we have our first retirement. It's Martin Donnelly from P5 in the Eurobrun. And that's going to be Bruno Giacomelli, very much under investigation by the stewards for that one, because he's obviously gone straight in to the back of Donnelly's car. And essentially he's put the Eurobrun out of the race. So that's definitely controversial. So Giacomelli's going to be under investigation. We've actually heard as well in the last week or so that there is another rule change coming in for 1991, in that normally scrutineering happens after the Grand Prix, but there is going to be a separate scrutineering session after the pre-qualifying race for pre-qualifying teams. And essentially it's going to allow teams that have broken the rules to be excluded or penalised from the pre-qualifying race, which will promote teams that are legally running cars up into the main event. So that will change things very dramatically over the course of 1991, and it will give more teams, in essence, a chance to compete in the Grand Prix itself. And Eddie Irvine's gone off! That's a big spin for Irvine. He just committed too much on the grass there, and he spun nearly 3 full 360-degree spins as he just drops the car on the wet patch there through turn 4. And now finds himself in the gravel trap, so not a great moment for Eddie Irvine, and he nearly spins the Real again, trying to get back onto the race circuit. So a big mistake there for the Ulsterman, and that's Zanardi. Zanardi in the Fonmetal. I'm afraid his day is done. So that is yet again another retirement for Alessandro Zanardi. He's only finished one race all season, the Italian. So he's never really been able to prove what he can do in that car, as Brundle sets the new fastest lap of the race, having been promoted up into P5. JJ Leto is trying to stay with Damon Hill, but Damon is steadily increasing his lead up in front. Here's Michael Schumacher having a great battle with Johnny Herbert. Herbert in the second Dallara trying to come through up the inside of the German. Schumacher trying to carry the speed around the outside, but he has to give best, and he lets Johnny Herbert go. So into 9th place goes the second Dallara, and that's Ghinzani in trouble. So Ghinzani in the Zach Speed pulls off the circuit. His race is over. So that is a big disaster for the Italian, Piercarlo Ghinzani, who is making his retirement at the end of this season. He's going to retire from Grand Prix racing. That was announced a couple of races ago. Meanwhile, Eddie Irvine trying to recover. There's Martini in the Minardi. Still a good battle here for the Italian. And Blundell's going off! He's just cooked it on the wet patch himself there, and the rest of the field are going to find Blundell in the middle of the circuit. That's the problem with the Hungaroring. They've said it many times. This place is very similar to Monaco in terms of the closeness to the walls. Is everybody going to avoid him? I hope so, because that car is in a very precarious position on the race circuit. Fortunately, they do all avoid him. Blundell spin turns the Osella, and the car rejoins at the back of the field. But a big mistake for Blundell, who now slips to the back. And that's Giacomelli up to 7th, Herbert to 8th, Schumacher to 9th, and Katayama to P10. So Damon Hill leads the way still. Leto in second place. 2 seconds back now. Martini, Warwick and Brundle. Then it's Eric Bernard, Giacomelli, Herbert, Schumacher, Katayama, Gasho and Suzuki. From Alan McNish, Paul Tracy. Then Juan Fangio the second in the sole remaining Eurobrun. From Ratzenberger and Willie T. Ribbs. Here's Winkelhock making the move on the AGS of Guerrero. They're behind Fittipaldi in 18th, so Winkelhock gets into 19th place past Guerrero, Tarquini, and then it's Blundell and Irvine, Ginzani, Zanardi and Donnelly all out of the race. But this man is out in front. Damon Hill in the Converse Dallara having a great race. Here's Aguri Suzuki having a fairly decent run at the moment. He's in behind Bertrand Gachot. This has not been the highest he's run through the season, of course. Aguri Suzuki has been a race winner in the pre-qualifying race before in the Go Bobby.UK Cup. Up to the braking zone. And down the drop once again. Here is Pierluigi Martini running in third place behind Jeje Leto. Up through the left-hander and into the final hairpin. So an absolutely fabulous run into the final hairpin and onto the main straight once again. Damon Hill, another new fastest lap, bangs in a quick one to try and stretch out the gap between himself and JJ Leto in the Monteverdi. It's looking good for these three teams though, Dallara, Monteverdi and Minardi. And the two Italian teams along with the Swiss team of Monteverdi running in the top three. Paul Warwick in the Porsche is next up. Here's Michael Schumacher in the Reynard. Threw away a chance to qualify last time out at the German Grand Prix, spinning on home soil. He gets on the inside line, but he's got pressure from Herbert, who's trying to hold on to it round the outside. That car is very mechanically quick. As Damon Hill continues to lead out front. Leto in second. Martini is third. Then it's Paul Warwick ahead of Martin Brundle. Eric Bernard in the second Monteverdi is there in sixth place. So the team genuinely with good pace here at the Hungaroring. Here's Paul Tracy. He's getting his run on Alan McNish, who's doing a much better job in the Life. He's in 13th place. So the Life is definitely making good progress. We're hearing that the team is not going to be accepted back into the 1991 season. As the team is going to have to make way for a new entrant for the Jordan team that is coming in for the 1991 season. Eddie Jordan Racing, of course, a very successful team in Formula 3000, and they're going to remain there for 1991, but the team is also going to have a Grand Prix team. So that's going to be very exciting. That's actually going to be led by the Williams team manager, Topher Smith, who will take over that team for next year. A new challenge for him. Another new fastest lap for Damon Hill. Still heavily in the 127s. So far so good as the team continues to make progress. But Damon Hill leads the race from Leto, Martini, Warwick, Brundle, Bernard, Giacomelli, Herbert, Schumacher and Katayama. As we ride on board with JJ Leto. Herbert's under pressure again from Schumacher, who comes through once more on the inside line, but Herbert drives right around the outside. Schumacher is balked on the way through to the inside apex, and now Katayama's got a chance at cracking Michael Schumacher. But Damon Hill continues to lead in the Dallara. 10 laps completed, 29 remaining. So it's already looking pretty exciting from Damon Hill's perspective as he leads the Hungarian Grand Prix pre-qualifying race, the Go Bobby.UK Cup. Out of the left he will come and into the next right flick. The Converse Dallara looking very strong indeed, with team boss Emma Featherstone clearly enjoying the moment up at the front end of the field. And here's Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi, trying to shake off Paul Warwick in the Porsche and Martin Brundle, his own teammate. Up to the left-hand hairpin, and the Glenfiddich Minardi going well here. Martin Brundle makes the mistake now. He overcooks it. So a big mistake for Brundle. Again, all it takes is just to put one wheel on the wrong part of the circuit on the damp patch, and the circuit's going to be very easy to bite you and spit you out. As Damon Hill sets yet another new fastest lap. Really impressive stuff so far. Leto, Martini, Warwick, Brundle, Bernard and Giacomelli. So we have the three retirements that we've already mentioned, and they are not going to be progressing through to the Grand Prix unless their teammates can get into the Grand Prix proper, as Katayama makes the move on Schumacher, and Ratzenberger locks up big time in the final hairpin. He's lucky to keep that on the road, actually, ahead of Ribs and Fittipaldi. So here comes Christian Fittipaldi. And into the pits, we've got one of the Zach Speeds coming into the pits. Now that is Winkelhock. He's got a loose wheel. So a big problem for Joe Winkelhock. That must have happened when he went into the gravel at turn 1. Now, it doesn't look as though they've got the fuel rig ready, so he's going to have to make this pit stop and another one to top up the car with fuel. 9.1 seconds in the pits, but Joe Winkelhock is not going to qualify for the Grand Prix. There's no way he can make up that sort of time with 28 laps remaining, including this one, which is almost at an end anyway. And Ginzani already out of the race, so Zach Speed, I'm afraid to say, are almost guaranteed not to be qualifying. And Guerrero's pulling off. Guerrero's got an electrical problem. So Roberto Guerrero in the AGS I'm afraid he and the team, that's compromised their race. They're not going to go any further with the number 21 car in this race. Roberto Guerrero out of the Hungarian Grand Prix thus far. And he can only get through if by some miracle Gabriele Tarquini manages to put his car into the top 3 teams to go through. And at the moment, he's a long way off that. In fact, the 3 teams likely to go through are Dallara, Monteverdi and Minardi. And the next team with a chance to get through is Porsche. They're running in 4th place. So Hill, Leto, Martini, Warwick is the top 4. 4 different teams in the top 4 places. As Pierluigi Martini continues on his way in 3rd position. There's Damon Hill in the Dallara. So the BMS Scuderia Converse Dallara running in the lead of the race here, which is the race that obviously determines which 3 teams will progress through to the Grand Prix. Here's Paul Tracy making his way onto the inside of Alan McNish in the Life. No chance of getting through there. Real progression made from the Life team, and as a result of which Tom Cairns is now going to take up the mantle of the Lola team in 1991. And he's looking forward to seeing what that team can do. They're currently looking on the verge of grabbing a top 10 position in the Constructors' Championship, which is definitely going to give Tom Cairns and the team a bit of a boost for 91. There's JJ Leto. This could do them an awful lot of good, actually, the Monteverdi squad. As Damon Hill finally laps the circuit in under 1:27. Slower lap times today because of the greasier conditions of the circuit. So it's going to be fascinating to see how the cars continue to progress. And there's Pierluigi Martini running in 3rd. Brundle is in the pits, so that's the first pit stop of the race as Brundle comes in from P5 he was, behind Warwick. And Herbert and Katayama have chosen the same lap to pit in, but Brundle is the first of the big guns to make the pit stop. 9.3 seconds for him as JJ Leto continues on his way. 4 seconds back now from Damon Hill. Herbert pits, so does Katayama. And it's going to be Brundle rejoining at about 13th position. That's about where we expected he would. So far so good from their point of view. But Hill and Leto, 1st and 2nd. Blundell is in the pits as well in the Osella. And obviously he had his moment a little earlier in the race, don't forget. So that's not exactly helped him out any. But the teams continue to make their progress in this Hungarian Grand Prix pre-qualifying race. The first 3 teams across the line are the ones who progress through to the Grand Prix of 1990. So Leto is still about 4 seconds or so back, dropping a little bit of time to Damon Hill, but it's consistency that's keeping them very much in the hunt here. But Damon Hill is, I'm fairly sure, on a lighter fuel load than Leto. Let's look at the fuel levels. Leto's got 6 laps of fuel remaining. Damon Hill's pitting on this lap, so that would play out essentially what we predicted, as Eddie Irvine is set to be lapped by Damon Hill, but I'm not sure it's actually going to take effect because obviously Hill is going to have a pit stop on this lap anyway. But the question is, will he lap Irvine before he makes his way to the pits, or is he going to get held up by him a little bit? That's also going to be quite costly in terms of race strategy. Here's Martini looking back to Paul Warwick in the Porsche. Paul Tracy, his teammate, comes in, and there's Damon Hill. He does get on the inside of Eddie Irvine. No problems at all there as Irvine lets him go. And through the chicane in the S's, Alan McNish now comes in from 11th place. So the Life driver doing a fair job there as Martini is suddenly losing big ground to Warwick. Warwick is really starting to push it now. And the tyres on that Porsche certainly seeming to come into their own at this stage of the race. So it's looking likely that we could see another challenge here. And for 3rd position, it's obviously a very important place because in 3rd place, you are guaranteed to go through to the Grand Prix. Essentially, whichever driver finishes in the top 3 is guaranteed to be racing in the Grand Prix, whatever happens. But it's the first 3 teams that cross the finish line that go through. So if you finish in the top 3, you are going to be in the Hungarian Grand Prix as Damon Hill pits. Damon Hill pits from P2, although technically it's from 1st. And look, they had run the fuel down to 0 in that car. So Damon Hill was literally on the verge of running out of fuel. Now that's something that could be an issue here at the Hungaroring, as Paul Warwick comes in the Porsche at the same time. But the Dallara was so thirsty out there, it has literally run to an empty tank pretty much. As Schumacher comes into the pits as well. And Damon Hill rejoins in P5. Now he was the race leader, so that's about right, because he'll rejoin. Leto is technically leading the race, of course, but he still needs to make his mandatory pit stop. Martini and Bernard do as well. Here's Fangio battling away with Brundle. Brundle gets up the inside. Fangio tries to hold it round the outside and does so. Well done to Juan Manuel Fangio, the second. He's held that very well indeed. So Martini running well in second place on the road, although he's in net third position, of course, because Damon Hill has already made a pit stop, and Leto and Martini were next up, and they have not yet pitted. Warwick decided to pit on the same lap as Damon Hill. Looks as though everybody's running their fuel pretty much down to the bone here, because they want to make sure they can get as far into the race as they possibly can under the greasy conditions. But Damon Hill and the Dallara team playing with fire there as they ran the fuel gauge actually said 0.0 laps of fuel. So that Dallara was due to run out of fuel any moment now, essentially. So that could be interesting. We haven't had too many issues with running out of fuel, but it could happen. And that's Ratzenberger passing a Minardi very quickly. Brundle's got an electrical problem. So having made a pit stop already, Brundle is now coasting back to the pits in the hope that he can get his car restarted. And here it comes Brundle into the pits, but it's bad news for the Brit. He's now got to rely on Martini getting through, as Eric Bernard pits in the second of the Monteverdis. Leto is now the man who picks up the mantle and leads out front, as Martini closes up to lap Eddie Irvine, because Leto's already done the job. So Brundle does make it back to the pits, but that's cost him any chance of a top 5 finish today. So an electrical issue just after the pit stop. They've managed to reboot the car and get him back out there. But it's no consolation at all for Martin Brundle, who had a really good chance in this one of a decent finish. He's now got to lay all of the hopes on his teammate as McNish goes off at the first corner. He's just gone too fast into turn 1 and locked up the car. And that's pitched him into the gravel, I'm afraid. So the Scotsman, one of the youngest men in the field, just 20 years of age, Alan McNish, as Leto sets the fastest lap. And I think McNish is beached. I don't think he can get out of that gravel trap. So this is bad news indeed for McNish in the in the Life. He could well end up at Lola next year, because I know that the relationship between him and team manager Tom Cairns is very good. McNish is trying to get the car back into the race again, but he's got to reverse it out of the gravel trap, essentially, to get it back on track. So this could be a very tall order for McNish to get back on the road. In fact, he's going to do so as Gasho overtakes Damon Hill under yellow flags. So Bertrand Gasho has just passed Damon Hill under yellow flags. Now, let's look at it again, because I'm fairly sure the yellow flags were out as the overtaking move was happening. We're going to need to look at it from on board Gasho's car to really see if the yellow flags were out by that point. But if that's the case, then he could have that position taken away from him. Let's look. Well, the yellow flags were not there at that point, but that car is still parked on the exit. But it certainly looked to me as though the yellow flags were initially out as Bertrand Gachon made the overtaking move. So that's a big problem for the Coloni. And that could cost Gachon a chance of a decent finish in this Grand Prix. Now, McNish has managed to get himself back onto the circuit and then straight back into the gravel again. But he manages to find the edge of the gravel trap now, and he should be able to make his way back on track once the field have given him a gap to get out, and they have done so. So McNish rejoins the race, but that is down at the back of the field. No problem at all, I'm afraid. So now we've got Giacomelli under investigation for his part in the Donnelly incident. And we've got Gasho under investigation for what we think is an overtaking move on Damon Hill at the first corner under yellow flags. So here's Mark Blundell, right on board with the Lego Acela, as Leto is in traffic at the moment, going a couple of laps further into the stint than Damon Hill, but he's in traffic, and this is not good news for the Finn, because this could hold him up quite considerably. And in terms of the bid to get into the race itself, that's definitely going to be a hold-up. So a Goody Suzuki is in the pits in 6th position, and that's a scheduled pit stop. Here's JJ Leto lapping Mark Blundell. Blundell gives him no trouble at all in the Fonmetal-backed Osella with its Lego insignia. And that car is going to be largely unchanged for 1991. Only the team name is set to change. Team boss Ed Hunter will still be in position, but the team will no longer be known as Osella. It will be known as Lego Fondmetal rather than Lego Osella, as the team sells its assets to the Fonmetal operation, but they wanted to keep team boss Ed Hunter in position at the squad. And that means that the Lego deal can remain, which is very good news from their point of view. So there is Giacomelli. Well, back to Brundle. So Brundle has rejoined in behind Willie T. Ribs after his electrical problem. And he dives up the inside of the American and gets through no problem. So Brundle through into P15, and Leto is in the pits, and that gives the lead of the race to Pierluigi Martini. And look, Leto runs the fuel down to the bone. No fuel left in that car at all as they come into the pits. So the cars are definitely running hungry on fuel as Giacomelli comes into the pits as well. Faster pit stop than Damon. But the big question is, where's Damon Hill on track? Gasho pits. So here's Damon Hill on the main straight. And is Leto going to beat him out of the pits? He has done. So Leto has beaten Damon Hill out of the pits. So Leto now leads the GoBobby.UK Cup. That's a significant moment in this race as Leto beats the Brit out onto the circuit. But Leto's going to have fresher tyres, but they're going to be cold, so he's going to need to get them up to temperature. Gasho, Ratzenberger and Fangio all pit from the top 10. And there's Schumacher in 8th position. Johnny Herbert is 9th. Aguri Suzuki is now 10th, having worked his way past the pits. But Pierluigi Martini leads the race, but he still needs the pit. So it's Leto and Hill that are battling away for position. The big problem for Minardi is now that Paul Warwick has been setting some good laps. So there's a good chance that they could lose out to the Porsche, which is currently in 4th place. Martini is pushing that car as far as it will go. And into the pits comes Martini. Now they've got a little bit more fuel on board with that car by the end of the stint, but Martini is the leader and he's going to come into the pits. Now he's going to lose second to Damon Hill, no problem at all, so he'll come out in 3rd, but will he come out in 4th ahead of Paul Warwick? Because Warwick's been going very well in this stint. And in fact, it's a bit of a sloppy pit stop for the Minardi team, 10.2 seconds, so this is touch and go for them really to get out in front of Warwick, but he's at the end of the pit lane, so he should be okay. As Warwick crosses the line, Martini does too, and Martini does get out in front of the Porsche of Paul Warwick by a much bigger margin than I thought it was going to be fair. But Damon Hill has got his sights on JJ Leto out in front, and he's going to try and push to catch up with him once more and get that Dallara ahead of the Monteverdi. We're at the half distance mark on this lap. So 21 of 39, halfway through this pre-qualifying race, and this is where the attrition tends to start setting in. And teams that thought they were safe and sound realise that they're not, and Giacomelli very nearly bins it there at turn 4. That was a very close call for the Italian. He just about manages to keep the car on the road there. But that was touch and go for a moment there for the Italian, and he definitely doesn't want to get himself into too many incidents like that one before this race is over. He wants to keep himself in the top 5 because any chance he's got of getting that car through to the Grand Prix, he needs to capitalise on it. His teammate Aguri Suzuki is currently in P10, so it's not so bad from his point of view, but he definitely needs to keep pushing on. Here's Leto. There's Damon Hill in the background. The gap is just 2.4 seconds, roughly. There's not much to choose between these two. If they remain in 1st and 2nd, it doesn't matter who finishes ahead of the other. They're both trying to get through to the Grand Prix. And if Martini remains in 3rd place in the Minardi, there he is, then it'll be those 3 teams, Monteverdi, and then the 2 teams of Dallara and Minardi that get through, and McNish is off again. He's already lost a lap. So now he goes off at the chicane. But again, he's got to wait until the field go by to make a bid to get back on the circuit again. Otherwise, he could cause a major obstruction. So Alan McNish is really having a difficult day at the office in the life. It clearly doesn't like the Hungaroring circuit. And he now drops to the back of the grid. Oh, it nearly goes off again, actually. And once more, he's got to wait until Tarquini goes by before he recovers back into the race. Alan McNish having a terrible day for bad luck. As Leto leads, but Damon Hill is 2.3 seconds back. So Hill is catching Leto. That's significant. So Hill is doing his best to close up on JJ Leto. And the Finn is just keeping himself to himself up front. Be great for him to hold on to this position. From what I'm told, not much is going to change in 1991 for this team. They're going to keep it pretty much as is. They're very proud of their Swiss heritage. They're going to keep it running in the same sort of guise as it has been previously, as Hill continues to chip away at Leto's advantage. There is Minardi of Pierluigi Martini. So the Minardi of Pierluigi Martini going well in third place here at the Hungaroring. And we're on lap 23 of 39. The laps are ticking over quite quickly now. Well, we're still going to have a few more thrills and spills, I'm sure, before this race is ultimately decided as to who is going to get through into the Hungarian Grand Prix of 1990. There's Willy T. Ribbs, and he's battling it out with Christian Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi gets through on the inside, and Ribbs has no defence. He's got to let the Brazilian driver get by. So Fittipaldi takes the place from Willy T. Ribbs, and then behind them is the Osella. That's Mark Blundell. Meanwhile, we've had a problem. Oh, that's why Willy T. Ribbs is going slowly. He's got a brake problem. So the Real, I'm afraid, is going to go into the pits for repairs and join his teammate Eddie Irvine at the back of the field. So big problems at Real today. They're not going to qualify, I'm afraid. So JJ Leto, Damon Hill, Pierluigi Martini, Paul Warwick, Bruno Giacomelli, that's your top five. As Paul Tracy pushes hard there as well. We've got 5 different teams now in the top 5 places, as Paul Tracy, the Canadian, is trying to get up there with his British teammate Paul Warwick. And Paul Tracy has settled into life at Porsche very quickly indeed, it has to be said. He was going beautifully at the Hockenheim circuit, which is obviously a bit of a speed circuit from his point of view. Very similar to the world of US racing where he's come from before. But he still hasn't quite clicked with the Titan Twisties in the Grand Prix circuit. So Warwick in 4th position, his teammate trying to close up on this man, Pierluigi Martini, in the Italian Minardi. As Damon Hill is now getting a little bit closer to Leto once again, 2.2 seconds in it. Here's Schumacher battling with Gasho. Gasho gets up the inside line. And is Gasho going to get through? Yes, he does. So Gasho gets through into position past Schumacher. And I am being told that there is going to be a 10-second penalty for Bruno Giacomelli. Now that is obviously because of his involvement in the incident with Martin Donnelly earlier. So Bruno Giacomelli will be given a 10-second penalty for basically causing an avoidable accident, is what I'm told. So Bruno Giacomelli will be handed a 10-second penalty, and that's bad news because that promotes Eric Bernard ahead of him. So Giacomelli will drop 10 seconds. So Giacomelli needs to go a little bit faster in the bid that he can salvage a bit more time. I wonder what's going to happen to Bertrand Gachot because he overtook under yellow flags. Now that is obviously a very serious incident. And that could be a very interesting situation. But it's a 10-second penalty for Bruno Giacomelli for causing an avoidable incident. And that, of course, can be appealed. It can be contested. It can even be magnified, depending on the outcome of the races. So Bruno Giacomelli, obviously, it could be deemed too weak a penalty. They could obviously have the team that was at fault there, or certainly that suffered from it, under investigation. And that's Aguri Suzuki. Suzuki slowing on the main straight. So Aguri Suzuki, I'm afraid, is out of the race with a gearbox problem. And that's the Japanese driver pulling off the circuit at turn 1. At the right time as well, not causing too many issues for the other drivers out there. So Aguri Suzuki, I'm afraid, the Japanese driver is out of the Hungarian Grand Prix. And with Giacomelli on a 10-second penalty, it looks as though Lola are not going to progress through to the Grand Prix today. So that is definitely a very difficult situation for the drivers. And now we're going to see what Damon Hill can do about JJ Leto. So it is definitely going to be a very difficult scenario. Now, this is an interesting one because the next investigation going on is essentially about whether there's going to be a penalty handed out for overtaking under yellow flags for Gachot. Looking up the regulations, it could be as much as a 10-second penalty for Gachot, and that's going to drop him behind several drivers. It's going to drop him behind Herbert and Katayama. And if Paul Tracy keeps going the way he's going, he could actually catch up to Gachot on aggregate time as well. So Gachot in the Coloni could lose a fair few places out of this. But he's trying to make up for it. He's trying to get the move on the inside of Schumacher. And there is the confirmation. Gachot, despite overtaking Schumacher into turn 1, has just got a 10-second penalty for overtaking under yellow flags. So it's the same penalty, essentially, that has been given to Giacomelli. And there's McNish getting his move on the inside line for Guerrero, but he can't make it stick. So McNish has to sit behind. Oh, no, that's Tarquini's car. My apologies. So McNish has to sit there. Now, here come the leaders, Leto and Hill, and they are in traffic. So this could get interesting as Leto gets the move on the inside of Joe Winkelhock. And he laps the Zach Speed, which has absolutely no chance at all now, I'm afraid, of qualifying for the Hungarian Grand Prix. They'll have to come back at Spa, although obviously they will be racing at the Birmingham Super Prix. There is Damon Hill as he tries to close up on Leto, who was a little bit balked by Joe Winkelhock, but if Hill can get through relatively quickly, then that's going to help him towards the latter stages of this race, because the gap has come down to 1.8 seconds already. And that's Katayama! Dear oh dear, the Coloni goes off in the chicane towards the end of the lap. And the Japanese driver runs off the road in 10th position. Now, where is Paul Tracy? He can't be far away. There he is in the background. So the Porsche has got significantly closer to the Coloni. We're back on board with Damon Hill in the Converse Dallara. Here's Schumacher yet again having a crack at Gasho. These two are swapping places lap after lap after lap. And this time Schumacher does get the deed done. Does he? Well, Gasho's trying to hold it round the outside. In fact, he does hold it round the outside. That shows that the mechanical grip of the Coloni is definitely stronger than that of the Reynard. So Schumacher struggling to hold the car on the inside line. And that's what lost him ultimate grip. Now here's Damon Hill tucked up behind Joe Winkelhock. And surely he's going to get through in the same place that Leto did a lap ago. Indeed he does. Winkelhock does not make it difficult for Damon Hill. So he gets through no problem. And the British driver now has a little bit of a push on him to go after JJ Leto. But there are two slower cars ahead. That's Eddie Irvine in the Real. And then we've also got one of the AGS cars. I think that's Tarquini. So this could be an interesting one, as Eddie Irvine has obviously caught Tarquini, but he's trying to get past him as Leto in the Monteverde closes up on the tail enders. So this could get a little bit spicy. And then you've got Alan McNish in the Life a little further away in front as well. So this is going to be about how JJ Leto decides to read the traffic out in front. Here's Martini. Minardi's still looking okay. And Leto tries to pitch it on the inside of the Real. Gets the move through past Irvine, no problem. Decides to wait a moment to get the move done on Tarquini in the AGS. And that should see him through no problem. Here's Schumacher on Gasho once again. This time, is he going to make it stick? On the inside line, he holds the inside advantage. But can Gasho get back at him? No, this time he does not. And in fact, Johnny Herbert is now lining up Gasho, who has a 10-second penalty coming his way for overtaking under yellow flags. So here's Leto. Then behind them, we've got this battle. Oh, this is Ratzenberger being caught now by Martin Brundle in the Minardi. So Brundle is trying to come through. Now, there's rumours that Brundle could have a top 10 team lined up for next year. Let's Leto! Leto goes off in the lead! JJ Leto runs wide, and there goes Damon Hill! Damon Hill goes through into the lead, so Leto throws away the lead, and there goes the Minardi of Pierluigi Martini. Leto nearly spins the car trying to recover, but he drops to third position. So Damon Hill now leads once again. A big mistake for JJ Leto as he just locks up the tyres into the penultimate hairpin, overshoots into the gravel, and keeps it going again. But JJ Leto has thrown away a pre-qualifying win here. Unbelievable situation for the Finn. Damon Hill now leads. Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi is second, and Leto is third. And he's under threat now from Paul Warwick in the Porsche, who's starting to close up on him. There is Leto. He's got going again. But the car right behind him is, I think, the Real. And then behind him is Paul Warwick. Schumacher and Gasho take 5. As Gasho tries again on the inside of Schumacher. Schumacher tries to keep the car around the outside, holding it in position, and this time he does sustain the place from Gasho. He's clearly learnt the lesson, and he's doing it the hard way. But he's still a very young man, is Schumacher. He's still learning his racecraft, and he's been thrown into a Formula 1 car at a very young age. So the battle continues. One of the youngest men in the field, and there are rumours arrived that there could be a top 10 deal for Schumacher for next year. Apparently Ferrari have their eye on him, and we could see an official announcement in the upcoming weeks. But Damon Hill gets the lead of the race after JJ Leto's trip into the gravel. And so Damon Hill leads the way here at the Hungaroring. Second place for Martini. Third place for JJ Leto. There's Paul Warwick going around the outside of Willie T. Ribbs in the Real. So Paul Warwick in the Porsche gets through, and he's trying to close up on JJ Leto in the Monteverdi to try and snatch that qualifying place away from him. But in third position is now JJ Leto. There's Pierluigi Martini. He's got some lap traffic between himself and the Dallara of Damon Hill. So Martini doing his best to get into this Grand Prix, but there are 3 slower cars in between the Minardi and Damon Hill. Here's Gasho trying yet again on Schumacher. This battle just does not let up into the first corner. Both drivers seem fairly evenly spread. Is Gasho going to hold it this time? Yes, he does get by Schumacher. So into 7th place, but this is going to cost him in the long run because essentially Gasho has a 10-second penalty coming his way, as does Giacomelli in P10. Now Giacomelli has made enough of a gap between himself and Bernard that the 10-second penalty isn't really going to change his position, but it is going to stop him having any chance of overhauling Warwick in their battle to get into the Grand Prix, because even if he overtakes him, Warwick's going to finish ahead of him unless Giacomelli can pull away to the tune of 10.1 seconds minimum. Here's Pierluigi Martini. Laps the Real. Gets through no problem. And now they've got Winkelhock and the AGS of Guerrero up in front, and they're battling for track position, I think. As Winkelhock makes his way through. That's the Real of Eddie Irvine unlapping himself from Martini. Now that's not going to do Eddie Irvine any favours, as here comes Giacomelli, who obviously has a 10-second penalty coming his way. So Warwick can essentially just let him go, which he does, because he'll finish ahead of him anyway. There's Damon Hill. 9 laps to go here at the Hungaroring in the pre-qualifying race, as Martini makes his bid around the outside of one of the slower cars and gets through into 2nd position. Looks like somebody up in front of us has had a lock-up. I think that is the battle between Winkelhock and Tarquini. It is indeed. So Winkelhock and Tarquini having a great little tussle, those two, in the Hungarian Grand Prix pre-qualifying race, as Hill has stretched his gap over Martini to over 6.5 seconds now. So it's looking very good indeed for the Brit, the son of the 2-time world champion Graham Hill. Damon Hill is really coming of age here at the Hungaroring, as Leto makes his bid to lap the Real, gets through no problem. And that should keep him in front of Giacomelli for a while. But Giacomelli, of course, has that 10-second penalty coming, and that's going to give Paul Warwick 4th position again, which puts him in the box seat if one of the top 3 drivers has a problem. Lap 32 begins. 8 to go. They really have zipped by in this race, as Hill runs in the lead of the race. It looks like Dallara is going to get into the Hungarian Grand Prix through their performance here in pre-qualifying. And then we've got Martini in 2nd position ahead of JJ Leto and Bruno Giacomelli, although Giacomelli has a 10-second penalty for causing an avoidable accident earlier in the race with Martin Donnelly. It put the Irishman out of the race, although you could argue Donnelly was heading off the circuit anyway. I think Giacomelli's nudge just finished the job, which is why he's been given the penalty. And then Bertrand Gachot has been given a 10-second penalty for overtaking under yellow flags, which he did a short while after that. As one of the Lifes, I think it was, that came off the circuit. Gachot's really struggling to get back on terms with Schumacher this time. And he's got Johnny Herbert all over the back of him. So Gachot in behind Schumacher. And then Johnny Herbert is trying to make his way up into 9th position. Paul Tracy in the Porsche up into 11th place now. This is a great debut couple of races for the Canadian. He really seems to have made a good impression on Grand Prix racing with the Porsche outfit. We know that his teammate Paul Warwick is going to be part of the Williams lineup next year. He'll be the official team test driver as they try and get the Williams up to speed. So it's going to be a fascinating lineup at Williams next year. Ayrton Senna will join the Williams Porsche team alongside Thierry Boutsen. Team test driver is set to be Paul Warwick. We've already discussed that. The development driver is set to be the young Brazilian rising star Gilda Ferran. So he will join the team. Meanwhile, Martini is here in the Minardi, still running 2nd, 7.4 seconds back, as Giacomelli and Warwick are still battling away for position for 4th place. In fact, I think Warwick initially got past Giacomelli, and Giacomelli has had to get him back again. So those two continue their squabble for 4th place on the road. But Paul Warwick doesn't want to beat him on aggregate time. He wants to beat him in a racing scenario. There's Damon Hill, stuck behind Alan McNish at the moment in the Life. So the Dallara, with the converse backing, still going strong here as they continue their charge forward. Off the chicane. And Damon Hill is having a terrific time in the lead of the race now, having taken the lead away from JJ Leto when the Finn went off on this corner. Overshot into the gravel trap, and ever since then, Damon Hill in the Dallara has been able to make the lead work for him. There goes Damon Hill, lapping the life of Alan McNish. And he now has 6 laps remaining in this pre-qualifying race as the field continues. Damon Hill, Pierluigi Martini, JJ Leto, Bruno Giacomelli, Paul Warwick, Eric Bernard, Michael Schumacher, Bertrand Gachot, Johnny Herbert and Ukyo Katayama in this pre-qualifying race for the 1990 Hungarian Grand Prix. Here's Giacomelli, about to lose ground to Warwick. Warwick in the Porsche is going to come back up the inside line, I think, and take 4th position away. We left it at the wrong moment, really. Let's see if Giacomelli held on. He did hang on in front of Paul Warwick in the end, actually. So a slight moment there for hope for the Porsche team. But Giacomelli did manage to maintain the advantage, although that 10-second penalty is going to promote Warwick into 4th position, whatever happens. Here's Johnny Herbert, and he now makes the move on Bertrand Gachot. That's great news for Schumacher. Bad news for Gachot. And, Gachot does defend the position in the end, actually. But still, a 10-second penalty is coming the way of the Belgian, whether he likes it or not. And that was for overtaking under yellow flags after the off in the early part of the race. So that's obviously causing a lot of concerns. Brundle and Blundell have made their way up to 14th and 15th as Leto laps Joe Winkelhock, or tries to anyway. And that's causing a bit of a headache because Martini is falling into the clutches of JJ Leto. And JJ Leto obviously wants to try and get back into 2nd position at least, even if he can't win. Because Damon Hill was catching him. It would have been an interesting battle between those two for the lead had Leto not gone off. But there is Damon Hill on lap 35. And Damon Hill running a solid afternoon's racing so far here in the Dallara. As the battle continues. Damon Hill in the Converse Dallara on lap 35 of 39. 5 to go. And it looks good so far for the BMS Scuderia, with Damon Hill doing a grand job here at the Hungaroring. This really has been a great circuit for him. He seems to gel well here. As JJ Leto finds himself now catching the Minardi. There it is. Pierluigi Martini is the car in front as Gachot is about to lose ground this time to Johnny Herbert. Does he get through? Yes, this time Herbert does get past Bertrand Gachot. And Martini is slowing. Martini is slowing. Martini's got a brake problem. Well, this will change the entire course of the Grand Prix because the car in 4th position is Giacomelli, but he's got a 10-second penalty coming his way, so that means that Paul Warwick and Porsche are going to get through. So Warwick's got to hesitate and wait for Martini, but he does get through into 4th place. Giacomelli's got a penalty coming, so Porsche look like they're going to get through to the Grand Prix after all, as Martini is struggling to get the Minardi back to the pits. Disaster for Martini. And I'm afraid for the Minardi team, it's game over in their hunt for the qualifying for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Martini does make it back to pit road with a couple of fuel laps left in the tank as well, actually. He didn't quite have enough to make it to the end. Now, this is interesting because the teams, I think some of them are actually going to have to make a splash and dash before the end of the race. In fact, look, Damon Hill is coming in at the end of this lap. He's got to make a splash and dash pit stop. Now, they've got a mandatory pit stop to take. But Martini's in. He needed to come in anyway, so he might be all right. He's lost some time, but he should be able to get through to the end of the race. But the fuel is going to cause an issue here for the drivers. So this could be very entertaining indeed for Damon Hill and the fans here, because Damon Hill is coming into the pits on lap 36 of 39. He's got to make a splash and dash pit stop to get to the end of the race. And so too, I think, does Leto, Giacomelli and Paul Warwick. In fact, Warwick is going to do it a lap earlier than Giacomelli. So this is something we've not seen in pre-qualifying this year, but a late pit stop to top up with fuel. That's how thirsty the cars are running here at the Hungaroring. Now, this is something that the teams are obviously going to have to be very mindful of going into the Grand Prix later this afternoon, but the cars are running very thirsty. Into the pits comes Damon Hill for a splash and dash. So into the pit lane. I think everybody's got to do it. The cars are just running so thirsty. They've got to take another pit stop. So there's Damon Hill, 8.5 seconds for the pit stop, and Paul Warwick in the Porsche should be coming in to do the same. Yep, into the pits he comes. And there's several teams out in the pits. So for the first time this season, pre-qualifying is going to have 2 pit stops. Well, that is fascinating. The car's running very thirsty then, here at the Hungaroring. And so Warwick comes into the pits. Hill rejoins in third, but he's got another pit stop. He's got another couple of laps to go. Eric Bernard brings the Monteverdi in. So surely Leto and Giacomelli will come into the pits as well. Herbert is in, and so is Michael Schumacher in the Reynard. So frantic pit lane activity in the closing laps of the race as teams are coming in for a splash and dash pit stop. Giacomelli's doing it as well, and so too is JJ Leto. So it's going to neutralise the dynamic of the race, whatever happens. So Leto's got to come in for a splash and dash as well. But what drama. If anybody decided they were going to try and go to the end of the race, we could have had cars running out of fuel. And not for the first time in Grand Prix racing. Well, what does that mean for the Grand Prix later, though? Here's JJ Leto coming into the pits, and look how thirsty the car is. Just drinking fuel savagely round the course here at the Hungaroring. We could see a bit of a problem coming in the Grand Prix itself later. As into the pits comes the race leader, JJ Leto, and Bruno Giacomelli will be in as well. So Damon Hill will take back the lead. And he goes past the pits very shortly. Here we go. So Leto is in for his stop. Giacomelli is in for his. It's a quick stop. Quick-ish, but then Leto's had to wait for the AGS to come in and have their pit stop. So this could get very interesting for Leto. What about Paul Warwick? Because Paul Warwick could come through and close up. Well, there is Warwick as Gasho comes in. So Warwick is going to be elevated to 4th place behind Bruno Giacomelli as Giacomelli just gets out ahead of him. But Giacomelli's got a 10-second penalty coming. So surely Giacomelli is going to lose that 3rd place on the podium in favour of Paul Warwick's Porsche. There's Martini trying to get himself back into contention. He's now in 5th place as a result of that little hiccup of a pit stop. Fangio has to come into the pits again. And so does Ratzenberger and Brundle. So everybody needing a splash and dash just to get to the end of the race. Thirsty work driving around the Hungaroring. But Damon Hill leads Leto now by 16.9 seconds as a result of all of that. So Damon Hill has got this race very much in the bag. It was looking pretty chaotic at one stage, but Damon Hill has well and truly disappeared out in front. And he's got enough fuel to get to the end of the race now. 2.5 laps of fuel will not drain in 1 lap, that is for sure. So into the final lap goes Damon Hill. It was a bit of a scare for the team there. And for all the rest of the teams as well. And certainly the Grand Prix teams are going to be very nervous about this heading into the Hungarian Grand Prix. There could be a very dramatic ending to the Hungarian Grand Prix if some teams can't last the distance on fuel. There could be a 4 pit stop race on the run. But here is Damon Hill. And he is doing a fantastic job. He has led for a large quantity of the race. He lost the lead in the first pit stop when JJ Leto managed to get the undercut. But then the Finn overshot and went into the gravel trap, costing him the lead. And now it is Damon Hill that is going to come through to the finish of the race. Is that another splash and dash pit stop? Oh, it's a puncture for Tarquini. A puncture for Tarquini in the AGS. So that drops him out of the race. And Willie T. Ribbs has gone off. On the final lap, Willie T. Ribbs has gone off the circuit. What's happened there to the Real? Oh, I'm not sure what's happened. It's like the engine has stalled on the car. Well, that is a very strange incident there for Ribbs. Yeah, the car, there's a box full of neutrals. A box full of neutrals for Willie T. Ribbs. I wonder if there's been damage there from somebody else. Oh, Blundell's gone off. Blundell's gone off the road. So Mark Blundell goes off on the final lap, and that costs him places to Ratzenberger and Brundle. So a crazy end to the race then as the grip levels reduce. I wonder if it started raining a little bit. As Damon Hill comes into the final couple of corners, he dodges the carnage and the chaos, and he's going to take his first win in Formula 1 racing cars. As he comes out of the final turn, Damon Hill in the BMS Scuderia Dallara wins the pre-qualifying race here at the Hungaroring. Dallara get into the Hungarian Grand Prix of 1990. Brilliant drive from Damon Hill, who really loves this circuit by the look of it. So it's great to see him into a Grand Prix again. And JJ Leto in the Monteverdi. What a great drive from him and the team. They come through to 2nd place despite their off. And the fastest lap of the race from Leto on the final lap So they steal the bonus point away from Damon Hill. Giacomelli crosses the line third, but he has a 10-second penalty. So Porsche are going to get into the Grand Prix for the third time this season. Excellent stuff. Not great news for Giacomelli, but then, unfortunately, the punishment fits the crime. He did take Donnelly off the circuit. So he fails to qualify. Giacomelli and the Lola team, they will slip to, I think they will actually slip Giacomelli to 5th position. 10 seconds will drop them behind Warwick and Martini. And Gasho's 10-second penalty will drop him behind Schumacher and Herbert to 9th position. So JJ Leto so nearly got the win he wanted so much. But Damon Hill is the man who gets the job done here at the Hungaroring. So Dallara, Monteverdi and Porsche will get through to the Hungarian Grand Prix. That is the way it will all shape out here at the Hungaroring. And a fabulous race it was. Really exciting stuff. And it gives us a very exciting opportunity to get... Oh, Damon Hill has run out of fuel on the last lap. So 2.5 laps was not a lot of fuel to get through, actually. So that's very telling. So Damon Hill comes through to take the victory in front of Leto, the Porsche of Paul Warwick, and the Lola of Bruno Giacomelli once the 10-second penalty has been applied. Actually, he falls behind Martini. Then it will be Eric Bernard. Then Gasho will get a 10-second penalty, which will drop him behind Schumacher and Herbert. Katayama will be 10th. Then Tracy, Fangio, Ratzenberger and Brundle. And then Blundell, Fittipaldi, Winkelhock, Irvine, Tarquini, Ribbs and McNish. And then we'll have Suzuki, Guerrero, Ginzani, Zanardi and Donnelly. The retirements from the race. Fastest lap of the race, as we know, was that of JJ Leto. So a bonus point there for JJ Leto in the reckoning. But what a sensational battle it's been in the Hungarian Grand Prix pre-qualifying race. We know now that it is Dallara, Monteverdi and Porsche that will go through to the Hungarian Grand Prix, which will be next up on our YouTube channel. We hope you've enjoyed it so far. The 1990 Hungarian Grand Prix is just around the bend.